Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Paranormal News. Tonight's article comes from NBCnews.com and the headline is Scientists Clone the First U.S. Endangered Species. A black-footed ferret was duplicated from the genes of an animal that died more than 30 years ago. It was published on February 18th, 2021. And it just says by the Associated Press. Cheyenne, Wyoming. Scientists have cloned the first U.S. endangered species, a black-footed ferret duplicated from the genes of an animal that died over 30 years ago. The slinky predator named Elizabeth Ann, born December 10th and announced Thursday, is cute as a button. But watch out. Unlike the domestic ferret foster mom who carried her into the world, she's wild at heart. You might have been handling a black-footed ferret kit and then try to take your finger off the next day. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Black-Footed Ferret Recovery Coordinator Pete Gober said Thursday. She's holding her own. Elizabeth Ann was born and is being raised at a Fish and Wildlife Service black-footed ferret breeding facility in Fort Collins, Colorado. She's a genetic copy of a ferret named Willa, who died in 1988 and whose remains were frozen in the early days of DNA technology. Cloning eventually could bring back extinct species such as the passenger pigeon. For now, the technique holds promise for helping endangered species, including a Mongolian wild horse that was cloned and last summer born at a Texas facility. Biotechnology and genomic data can really make a difference on the ground with conservation efforts, said Ben Novak, lead scientist with Revive and Restore, a biotechnology-focused conservation nonprofit that coordinated the ferret and horse clonings. Black-footed ferrets are a type of weasel, easily recognized by dark eye markings resembling a robber's mask. Charismatic and nocturnal, they feed exclusively on prairie dogs, while living in the midst of the rodents' sometimes vast burrow colonies. Even before cloning, black-footed ferrets were a conservation success story. They were thought extinct, victims of habitat loss as ranchers shot and poisoned off prairie dog colonies that made rangelands less suitable for cattle, until a ranch dog named Shep brought a dead one home in Wyoming in 1981. Scientists gathered the remaining population for a captive breeding program that has released thousands of ferrets at dozens of sites in the western U.S., Canada, and Mexico since the 1990s. Lack of genetic diversity presents an ongoing risk. All ferrets reintroduced so far are the descendants of just 7 closely related animals. Genetic similarity that makes today's ferrets potentially susceptible to intestinal parasites and diseases such as sylvatic plague. Willa could have passed along her genes the usual way too, but a male born to her named Cody didn't do his job, and her lineage died out, said Gober. When Willa died, the Wyoming Game and Fish Department sent her tissues to a frozen zoo run by San Diego Zoo Global that maintains cells from more than 1,100 species and subspecies worldwide. Eventually, scientists may be able to modify these genes to help cloned animals survive. With these cloning techniques, you can basically freeze time and generate those cells, Gober said. We're far from it now as far as tinkering with the genome and to confer any genetic resistance, but that's a possibility in the future. Cloning makes a new plant or animal by copying the genes of an existing animal. Texas-based Biogen, a company that clones pet cats for $35,000 and dogs for $50,000, cloned a Przewalski's horse, a wild horse species from Mongolia born last summer. And I apologize if I butchered that. I have no idea how to pronounce that. Similar to the black-footed ferret, the 2,000 or so surviving horses are descendants of just a dozen animals. Biogen also cloned Willa through coordination by Revive and Restore, a wildlife conservation organization focused on biotechnology. Besides cloning, the nonprofit in Sausalito, California, promotes genetic research into imperiled life forms, ranging from sea stars to jaguars. How can we actually apply some of those advances in science for conservation? Because conservation needs more tools in the toolbox. That's our whole motivation. Cloning is just one of the tools, said Revive and Restore's co-founder and executive director, Ryan Phelan. Elizabeth Ann was born to a tame domestic ferret, which avoided putting a rare black-footed ferret at risk. 2 unrelated domestic ferrets also were born by cesarean section. A second clone didn't survive. Elizabeth Ann and future clones of Willa will form a new line of black-footed ferrets that will remain in Fort Collins for study. There currently are no plans to release them into the wild, said Gober. Novak, the lead scientist at Revive and Restore, calls himself the group's passenger pigeon guy for his work to someday bring back the once common bird that has been extinct for over a century. Cloning birds is considered far more challenging than mammals because of their eggs. Yet the group's projects even include trying to bring back a woolly mammoth, a creature extinct for thousands of years. The 7-year effort to clone a black-footed ferret was less theoretical, he said, and shows how biotechnology can help conservation now. In December, Novak loaded up a camper and drove to Fort Collins with his family to see the results firsthand. I absolutely had to see our beautiful clone in person, Novak said. There's just nothing more incredible than that. And that is the end of this article. So essentially, what's going on here is they have cloned a ferret and a horse. Is what they're talking about in this article. They're talking about cloning the woolly mammoth and bringing that back from extinction. Now, I've done articles on the woolly mammoth before and their efforts to clone it. I don't know how I feel about that. The woolly mammoth is a very large creature. And I could see bringing 1 or 2 back to study to get, more knowledge on the woolly mammoth and not mistreat them. Give them a good life, put them up in an enclosure somewhere where they can be comfortable and happy, and make sure they're well fed. Don't beat them. Don't torture them. Don't do anything terrible to them, but just make one and study it and see how it looks and all that kind of stuff. And then when it dies naturally, dissect it and check it out and all that. I can see doing that. I'm not super comfortable with it, but I wouldn't oppose it as long as the animal is treated well. I don't want anything brought back and tortured or experimented on when it's alive. But what I am concerned about is where that's going to lead, because they're talking about wanting to bring back dinosaurs. That is what the work on the woolly mammoth is going towards, that goal by scientists to make Jurassic Park a reality. They actually want to bring back living dinosaurs. And to me, that just seems crazy. Now, the problem with bringing the woolly mammoth back in any large numbers is where the hell are they going to go? I mean, there's no room for these things. They're gigantic. I mean, it'd be like putting a whole new species of elephant out there, a big-ass elephant. Where are you going to put them? There's not a whole lot of wilderness left for them to be. So that's the issue. The other issue is purpose. Why? Now, I can understand if you want to bring them back as a food source, right? Bring them back, clone them, to slaughter them for meat, to feed people. At least that makes sense. Is it right to do? I don't know. Probably not. I mean, it's kind of... But then again, we do that with every other animal, so why not? This way we are giving this animal life just to take it, but we kind of do the same thing with cows and chickens and everything else. Their whole purpose is for us to eat them. We breed them, we raise them in captivity just to kill them, butcher them, and feed people with. So I could see doing something like that with woolly mammoths. That would make sense because our ancestors ate it, right? We used to hunt woolly mammoths and kill them and eat them back in the day. So to me, that makes complete and total sense. I'd be on board for something like that. Now, you might have a differing opinion. You might think that's pretty damn mean. And in reality, it probably is. It's probably kind of a bad thing. But we do it now with all kinds of different species. So what makes this species any different? The only difference here is that we brought it back just to eat it. But what other purpose is it really going to serve? I mean, you can have a couple of them in a zoo somewhere, and whenever they die, just create more. But if you want to have an actual breeding population, you want this thing to be back so that it can reproduce the right way without us making them, you're going to have to make a lot of them. And if you make a lot of them, what's the purpose? Where they're going to be? We can't just release them into the wild somewhere. They're going to overrun habitat that's crucial for other animals to live in. So that's my ideas on it. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think. I think it's really cool they can clone animals now. We knew about that already from a long time ago, from Dolly the sheep, many, many, many years ago. But it's becoming a lot more common practice now, and they're being able to do a lot of different animals. The next giant leap is going to be when they can either bring back the passenger pigeon, because being a bird, it's a lot harder, as they were saying in the article, because of the eggs, or if they can actually pull off the mammoth. That's going to be amazing as well. So let me know down in the comments what you guys think. As always, you make up your own minds, and I will catch you on the next one. Until I speak to you again, love many, trust few, and do harm to none. God loves you, and so do I. Bye-bye.